right, so I'm going to introduce you our speaker for today. Our speaker is Dr. Carden. He's a professor of economics and business at Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee. He earned his PhD in economics from Washington University in St. Louis in 2006, where he studied with John Nye and the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1993, Douglas North. He's also currently an adjunct fellow at the Independent Institute, a member of the adjunct faculty at the Ludwig von Mises Institute. He also was a visiting research fellow at the American Institute for Economic Research in 2008 and 2009. He has taught a different summer program for the Institute for Human Studies and the Ludwig von Mises Institute. He's also a regular blogger on the Division of Labor blog, and is also a regular contributor at Forbes. Today, he's going to talk to us about Wal-Mart and society. Please welcome Dr. Carden.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me. This is actually the first time I've ever been in Colorado, except for a couple of stopovers at the airport. I've had a really great time. I appreciate everyone's hospitality, and we're going to make do with what looks like technologica psychedelica over the course of the next hour or so. I was a little bit worried because I saw that, I smelled the pizza when I walked in the room and thought maybe, just maybe, I'm the only thing standing between you and free pizza. But then I realized that lo and behold, all of the pizza has been eaten, which means that I can fulfill the role of a professor, which is to be one who talks in someone else's sleep. Okay. So let's talk about Wal-Mart specifically and how I got interested in this research agenda and what we're going to talk about over the next 45 minutes or the next hour or so. So to go way, way back, my first semester at Rhodes, I had an interesting discussion in the Introduction to Economics class I was teaching about Wal-Mart and why Wal-Mart, for example, might support a higher minimum wage and what this meant for policy, what this meant about how we understand supply and demand and all of this other wonderful stuff. And at the same time, a couple of my friends said, hey, let's write a paper about social capital. And we'll talk about what social capital is in a minute. I said, lo and behold, here's all this data on Wal-Mart that we can use. One paper about Wal-Mart turned into 3 papers about Wal-Mart, now 4 papers about Wal-Mart, with papers 5, 6, and 7 in the offing. I've learned an awful lot in the process about Wal-Mart, about capitalism, about freedom, and also about the process by which knowledge is developed. So I'm reasonably certain that there are among you some people in the audience who have very, very, very strong opinions about Wal-Mart, whether Wal-Mart is great or whether Wal-Mart is evil. You probably have some very good reasons for liking Wal-Mart. You probably have some very bad reasons for liking Wal-Mart. You probably have some very good reasons for disliking Wal-Mart, and you probably have some very bad reasons for disliking Wal-Mart. By the end of the discussion, we're going to see exactly what the data says. And we're going to try to figure out kind of exactly what are the good reasons to like Wal-Mart, the bad reasons to like Wal-Mart, the good reasons to dislike Wal-Mart, and the bad reasons to dislike Wal-Mart. So we're going to talk about some basic economic fundamentals, the pillars of macroeconomics. We're going to talk about the impact of Wal-Mart and, by extension, free market capitalism on society at large. We're going to talk about some of the future directions in which our Wal-Mart research is going, and then I'll take questions and answers. I will answer questions at the end. So let's talk about macro Wal-Mart. There's now an entire literature, an entire body of books, some books by economists, some books by non-economists, writing about Wal-Mart and its impact on society, its impact on business, its impact on what have you. And some of the major areas that people are writing in when they talk about Wal-Mart are what we might call the 3 pillars of macroeconomics: employment, prices, and income. The conventional wisdom, or at least one accusation, is that Walmart comes to town, they destroy all the small local businesses, and they reduce the net number of employment opportunities. The research suggests that that's probably not accurate. In a series of papers that begin with the paper that was published in the Review of Economics and Statistics in 2005, Emmett Basker has shown that every new Walmart is associated with roughly an increase of about 50 jobs in retail on net. There's been some debate about whether it's retail as such, but on net, Walmart seems to be a job creator. And some people might ask, well, what about the kinds of jobs that Walmart is creating? Are they creating like really meaningful good jobs? Are they creating new retail jobs? Or are they just crowding out jobs Jobs for people who were working for existing small businesses. And again, the data suggest, according to a paper that was published in 2008 by Russ Sobel and Andrea Dean, the data suggests that there's no effect of Walmart on small business employment or employment in small establishments, meaning establishments with fewer than 5 workers or fewer than 9 workers or fewer than 10 workers. And part of this is the process of what Joseph Schumpeter called creative destruction. Walmart moves to town, and if you own a business that sells something that competes directly with Walmart, so if you sell cheap toys, you're probably done for. If you sell hardware and Home Depot moves in next door, you're probably done for. However, what this does is this creates new opportunities by giving people in the community more income, by making their dollars go farther, and these old businesses are replaced with newer businesses. Sobel and Dean use national data. So they're using data for all 50 states, but they point specifically to, they offer as a case study Morgantown, West Virginia, where they are. They were at West Virginia University. And they said, yeah, Walmart moved to town, and yes, some of the small little shops closed down, but they're replaced by like a clothing boutique and an ice cream parlor and a law firm and some other things. So some small businesses close, but other small businesses open up. The major effect that Walmart has had on the American economy is through its impact on prices. Indeed, economists Ephraim Leibtag and Jerry Hausman have argued that the effect of Walmart alone on prices, the effect of Walmart, Target, Kmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, Costco, big box retail very generally, the effect of these stores on prices is so substantial that we are mismeasuring the rate of inflation in the United States by, I think, about 1% a year, strictly as a result of the fact that when we calculate rates of inflation, we're not adequately accounting for the effect of stores like Walmart, Target, Costco, Sam's Club, et cetera, on prices. And so some of you might be familiar with the narrative talking about stagnation of middle-class incomes since about 1973. And if, in fact, we are mismeasuring the consumer price index strictly as a result of the fact that we're not properly accounting for retail innovations, that entire narrative changes. And it changes completely. It goes from a relatively unambiguous increase in standards of living for everybody to a totally unambiguous increase in standards of living for everybody over about the last 35 or 40 years. So the enormous impact of Walmart, the biggest impact of Walmart, has been primarily on the prices of the goods and services that people are buying. So let's review for a second. Jobs. Walmart on net tends to create jobs. Walmart on net tends to reduce prices. Walmart doesn't really affect net employment at small businesses, but it crowds out the businesses with which it competes and creates new opportunities in sectors in which it doesn't compete. So I'm going to digress for just a second. Okay. Some of you have probably heard debates about immigration, whether we should allow in more immigrants in the United States. And the classic objection to more immigration is that they're going to come and they're going to take our jobs. If we let in more immigrants, they're going to come and they're going to take our jobs, and our wages are going to be lower as a result, and we're all going to be worse off. Once again, the data suggests this simply is not true, because the immigrants who come into the United States have skills that are not substitutes for the skills of Americans, but rather they're complements to the skills of Americans. One of the most important principles of economics is trade creates wealth. Opportunities to cooperate in a competitive market make everybody better off. And we see this through immigration. We see a similar effect when we look at technological changes and when we look at retail innovations in the retail sector, particularly when we're dealing with Walmart, Costco, Target, et cetera. So you might say, okay, well, this might be true. Maybe we get more jobs and we get lower prices. But what about the suppliers? Are we not squeezing the suppliers in some way? Are we not making suppliers worse off? And if you've read Charles Fishman's book, The Walmart Effect, he has this very interesting story about Vlasic pickles. And Walmart came to Vlasic Pickles and said, we want you to sell us 3-gallon jars of pickles at this incredibly ridiculous discounted price. I think $2.97 for a 3-gallon jar of pickles. Okay. Now, for a pickle company, if you're going to make money selling pickles, you're going to make all of your money selling hamburger stackers and sliced pickles and all of these other pickle products that you can sell at much higher profit margins. And the story is that, well, Walmart squeezed the Vlasic Pickle Company so hard that ultimately they went out of business. And you hear story after story after story of firms that dealt with Walmart and that ultimately went out of business. But, and here's where I'll caution you about sort of the nature of the scientific process. Anecdotes are evidence, but they're not always persuasive. You can always and everywhere find somebody who had a bad experience dealing with Walmart, or find somebody who had a bad experience dealing with the post office. Or you can probably, God forbid, find someone who had a bad experience dealing with the administration at Metro State. You can always find somebody who can tell you a horror story about something. When you're dealing with a $14 trillion economy, and in the case of Walmart, when you're dealing with a firm that employs 2 million people, a handful of horror stories are not necessarily going to be, or not really going to give us a whole lot in terms of persuasive evidence in one direction or the other. So in a study that was published in the Journal of Retailing in 2001, a couple of scholars looked and said, well, what happens to the firms that deal a lot with Walmart, firms with large market share that sell a lot to Walmart, versus firms with small market share that sell a lot to Walmart? And truth be told, the jury is still kind of out on this, but for a lot of firms, they might be willing to trade off a short-run squeeze, which is lower profits in the short run from dealing with Walmart, for greater market share in the future, which is ultimately going to increase future profitability. So it could very well be that Walmart's not necessarily squeezing suppliers in the way that its critics suggest, but rather Walmart is offering its suppliers access to a global supply chain that is absolutely positively unlike anything that the world has ever seen before. So you might be willing to trade off lower profits in the short run in exchange for much higher profitability in the very, very long run, because you now have your goods integrated into a global supply chain. What about poverty? One criticism of Walmart, or one of many criticisms of Walmart, is, well, they just don't pay enough. And presumably, they might be able to move into a market and establish local market power where they can exploit workers. They can underpay them relative to what they can produce. And indeed, there's one paper suggesting that, yes, in fact, actually, Walmart increases local poverty rates. But it's not necessarily clear exactly how or why this would be taking place. It could very well be that, yes, Walmart has some local monopoly power, but Walmart could also be a net attractor for people who would like to move to a region and want some sort of access to retail, some sort of access to businesses. And it could also very well be the case that Walmart is in fact slowing the decline of already declining areas. This is actually a paper that we haven't written yet, is one responding to this claim. And in fact, actually, we were invited to submit a proposal for a special issue of a journal on Walmart. And we said, well, here, we've got the data, let's take this out, because there's this claim that Walmart increases county poverty rates. And unfortunately, the editors basically said, there's no way that could be true. I mean, there's a paper suggesting that maybe it's true. And this is something, again, where there's the jury is still out on the effect of Walmart on local county poverty rates. So let's look at the very, very big picture, and think, what is the effect of Walmart on the national economy? There's a calculation that some people do where they calculate what they call social saving, which is basically the percentage of GDP that we can attribute to the existence of some entity, Walmart or Target or whoever. And in their 2007 book on Walmart, Richard Vedder and Wendell Cox estimated the social saving attributable to Walmart at 5% of GDP. Okay, so 5%, what does that mean? 5% is an enormous number. For comparison's sake, the social saving of 5% of GDP, strictly attributable to Walmart, is roughly equal to the social saving that we can attribute to the existence of railroads in the United States in the 19th century. So no Walmart would be basically the same thing for the American economy as no railroads. Now, granted, this would not create any kind of economic apocalypse. 5% of GDP, I say that's roughly 2 years' worth of economic growth, and most of us wouldn't mind too terribly if we had the same standards of living that we had in 2008. If our standards of living today were bumped back to what they were in 2008. We have a lot of really nice stuff today, a lot of meaningful stuff. My wife and I took the iPhone plunge a couple of months ago. We now have fancy iPhone 4s, which you might think, well, this is some sort of trinket. It's a bauble. It's just meaningless stuff. But I'm able to carry around an enormous photo album containing pictures and videos of my two children, and I'm able to interact with people in ways that I was not able to interact in 2008. So yeah, it may very well be that 2 years worth of economic growth is not much, but it's still meaningful for an awful lot of people. And so we've made the case, and the data are pretty unambiguous, that the economic effect of Walmart is positive. We're richer, prices are lower, we have more jobs, we have more opportunities, etc. Walmart makes us better off. So some of you might be thinking, okay, yes, this is true. Walmart might be great for providing us with all sorts of baubles and trinkets and iPhones and stuff like that, but at what price? So if you're asking that question, first of all, I'm going to congratulate you on your use of marginal reasoning, saying at what price, looking at trade-offs at the margin. That's one of the first things that we try to do in econ classes, and that's what we're going to talk about for the remainder of our discussion, is the non-economic cost and benefits of Walmart when it enters communities and when it begins to do business. So we want to figure out how Walmart affects communities. So it may very well be that we deliver more stuff, and Walmart gives me an iPhone, and Walmart gives us the latest Nintendo, and we can sit on our couch playing Super Mario Brothers, and we can eat Doritos, and we can do all sorts of stuff, but it costs us community connections, it costs us friendships, it costs us time we spend with our family, it costs us social capital. I'm told that in at least one political science class right now, people are reading Robert Putnam's book, Bowling Alone. Those of you who are reading that book and those of you who are not, I would encourage you to go to bowlingalone.com where you can actually download Putnam's entire data set. And that's actually where we got a lot of the information that we're using in some of these studies. Putnam argues that, and I quote, whereas physical capital refers to physical objects and human capital refers to properties of individuals, social capital refers to connections among individuals, social networks, and norms of reciprocity that arise from them. So on one hand, social capital is important for future economic growth. You want to be able to trust people. You want to be able to have relationships with people. A lot of the transactions that you make, a lot of the interactions that you have on a day-to-day basis are not mediated by market prices. If you have a significant other, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you're not saying, hey, I'll come over and watch a movie with you if you give me $5 or $10 or $20 or $50 or something like that. I mentioned I have 2 kids. I have a 4-month-old daughter and a slightly more than 2-year-old son, and I'm not billing them for time that I'm spending attending to bath time and diapers and all sorts of stuff like that. So believe you me, there's an awful lot more than money that matters. There's a lot more than money that matters, and we want to see how commercial institutions, and perhaps by extension capitalism, affects those kinds of social institutions. How often do you have dinner with your friends? Do you play team sports? Do you go to church? Do you gamble? Do you vote? Do you participate in the census? Do you do all of these things that we associate with a good life that may not necessarily be measured in monetary terms? And our research suggests that there's basically no effect of Walmart on any of this stuff. Walmart just doesn't really matter a whole lot. Yes, Walmart comes in perhaps and it makes Nintendos cheaper and you spend more time playing video games, but you compensate for that by the fact that you might be actually playing video games with your friends or something like that. So let's consider here a quick example and a quick lesson in the process of science. Science is sometimes an art, sometimes science is actually a science. So let's consider just a couple of the coefficients that we estimated. We're looking at Walmart and the percentage change in a couple of different measures of social capital, and we're using a model that's called a state fixed effects model. And throughout most of the paper, this was published in Public Choice in 2009, most of the paper we find nothing really, no real effect of Walmart on most of these measures of social capital, but let's hone in on just a couple of them. Nonprofit associations per 10,000 people in a county, the voter turnout rate in a county, which is roughly 50%, the number of nonprofits per 10,000 people in a county, and the census participation rate. We can see how Walmart affects these things by measuring Walmart a couple of different ways. First, the number of Walmarts per 10,000 residents. Second, the natural logarithm of the number of Walmarts in an area per 10,000 residents times the number of years that Walmart has been there. And then finally, that same measure restricted solely to rural areas. Identifying and creating new knowledge is really, really, really hard. And you probably read a lot of things in the newspaper that oversell some of the results that are published in medical studies, in economic studies, in political studies, in all of this other stuff. So I have some numbers up here, and these numbers are pretty. 0.6, 0.8, minus 0.1, 0.2, 0.7, 0.5, blah, blah, blah. So what in the world do these numbers mean? Well, first of all, some of these numbers have little stars by them, which if you have taken or do take a course in statistical methods or econometrics, this means that these are statistically significant, which means basically that we're pretty sure that number is not 0. Okay? It means that number is estimated somewhat precisely. I've highlighted the voter turnout rate because in this particular set of models, it appears that Walmart exerts a statistically significant effect on voter turnout, and that statistically significant effect is negative. So Walmart actually reduces voter turnout. So what we might see then is something in the newspaper that says, well, Walmart destroys democracy. According to researchers from Rhodes College, the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and Agram, Walmart's presence leads to significant reductions in voter participation. Okay, statistically significant, yes, meaning we know that number is not zero. We want to know whether the magnitude of that number is important, though. Statistical significance doesn't really tell us a whole lot. Quantitative significance might tell us a little bit, and the beginning of wisdom is to find out whether a 0.7% reduction in voter turnout is meaningful. At average voter turnout of, say, like 55%, a 0.7% reduction is probably not going to be enough to make much of a difference in a lot of places. And if we're dealing with, say, like a 10% increase in Walmart penetration, however that happens to be measured, we could be dealing with enormous increases in Walmart exposure, generating these very, very, very tiny effects. So even though it might be statistically significant, it may not be quantitatively significant, and it may not be anything that's worth worrying about if voter turnout is something that you're really, really, really concerned with. Let's move on. Okay, so Walmart doesn't really affect social capital. We're pretty sure that it doesn't affect the frequency with which you have dinner with your friends and do all sorts of stuff that isn't money that is nonetheless important to a well-lived life. Walmart's attracted a lot of criticism from a couple of different directions. First, from the left, Walmart has been denounced as a conservative cultural gatekeeper. How many of you guys read Maxim? Or girls read Maxim? Okay, all right, a couple of people read Maxim. How about Stuff? Or For Him magazine? Okay. Can you buy these things at Walmart? No, you cannot. How many of you like Nirvana? All right, so a couple of people like Nirvana. How about Sheryl Crow? Okay, a couple of people like Sheryl Crow. You can't get Nirvana CDs. You can't get Sheryl Crow CDs at Walmart. Why can't you get Maxim For Him stuff? Because it's borderline pornography. Okay, why can't you get Nirvana CDs? Because on their In Utero album, they had a song that was called Rape Me, that a lot of people who shop at Walmart found offensive, so they produced a Walmart version where they changed the title of the song to Waif Me, W-A-I-F, which I'm not exactly sure what it means to waif someone, but nonetheless, this made it a little bit more socially acceptable for Walmart listeners. Why can't you get Sheryl Crow CDs? As I understand it, at Walmart, because she doesn't like Walmart, and Walmart responds in kind and says, okay, well, we're not going to sell your stuff in our stores. Okay, so Walmart is denounced as a conservative cultural gatekeeper by people on the left, but on the right, they've been denounced for being in league with Satan because they joined the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce a few years ago, and they tried to reach out to the gay and lesbian community. So from both directions, they're saying, well, Walmart's bad because they're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing the other thing. So what we wanted to do is look and see, well, how does Walmart affect people's values? Does Walmart affect whether you consider yourself old-fashioned, whether you consider yourself conservative? Is it foisting a rural conservative agenda on people? Or is it foisting a secular, worldly, and godless agenda on people? Does it affect how often you go to church? Does it affect whether you smoke weed? Does it affect whether you gamble? Does it affect all of these different measures of your individual values? And again, we find, not really so much. So if you're looking for sources of cultural change, exposure to international commerce in the form of Walmart, Target, Costco, etc., is probably not really what's driving things. Now, we do find occasionally a couple of interesting things that we might want to run with. So some of you might be familiar with Professor Alex Padilla's research on the economics of self-regulation in the pornography industry. And we found, using some of the data from Putnam's from Robert Putnam's data set, we found 1 year of data, and we found that if you include no state fixed effects, having Walmart in a county reduces by about 5% the frequency with which people rent pornographic videos. If you include state fixed effects, you get an almost 6% reduction in the frequency with which people rent pornographic videos in counties in which Walmart does business. So this looks great, and it looks wonderful, and it looks like it'd be a fantastic press release and something that most media outlets would be very, very interested in. Hey, more Walmart equals less porn. But the problem here is that we have exactly 1 year of data, and I'm almost certain that what's really driving this effect is there's something, perhaps, about the counties in which Walmart does business that predicts both infrequent porn rental and presence of a Walmart. So this is the sort of thing that looks like a pretty cool result and looks like a pretty cool idea, but I'm almost certain that the effect of Walmart on porn rental is practically zero. And 1 year worth of data is going to be insufficient to really show us what's going on. So does Walmart affect social capital? No. Does Walmart affect values? Not really. How does Walmart affect the way that people spend their time? Because looking at people's income and looking at how Walmart affects income and prices and all this other stuff might be a not terribly straightforward way of figuring out how it affects people's standards of living. So the next thing that we did is we looked and we saw how how increasing expansion of Walmart affects the way that people spend their leisure time. And they do more of stuff that involves inputs for which you can, that involves stuff that you can buy at Walmart. They do a little bit less stuff that involves things that you can't get at Walmart. And in particular, and this we found interesting, Walmart tends to increase the frequency with which people engage in high culture activities. We identify an approximately 3.1% increase in the frequency with which people go to the theater or the opera or what have you when they have access to Walmart. So this is interesting, I think. That the interpretive challenge here is somewhat complex. Because first of all, it's not, it's obviously not the case that people immediately become more literate just because Walmart plops down a store. Okay. I think that the effect is more indirect. Walmart saves people money. So prices go down, people have higher incomes, and then people use those higher incomes to do a bunch of other stuff. In particular, they tend to consume more of what economists call normal goods or luxury goods, and things like tickets to the theater, tickets to the opera, and expensive books are examples of normal goods or luxury goods. So from a 50,000-foot perspective, what we're doing here is we're evaluating this claim that's popular among a lot of people that yes, capitalism delivers the goods, or economic freedom delivers the goods, or Walmart delivers the goods, but it costs us our very souls. It costs us all the things that make us human. To quote Wordsworth, in getting and spending we lay waste our powers. So by being acquisitive and by buying stuff, we make ourselves somehow less human. Well, it turns out that apparently technological changes, and in particular technological changes in retail, seem to actually expand our opportunities to engage our full humanity. What we're doing right now is a precise example of this. Right now we're having what I think is an interesting and fun conversation about the relationship between Walmart and the American economy and Walmart and American society at an excellent institution of higher education in a climate-controlled room where we can all sit around comfortably and debate exactly these issues. Economic growth is what has made this possible. Okay, so it's not the case that economic growth has made us less human in any meaningful sense. Economic growth has provided us with the resources we need to engage in the intellectual process. Most recently, we've looked at the relationship between super Walmart specifically and obesity. My co-author in this project, Charles Cordemanch at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, is an expert on the economic causes and consequences of obesity. Indeed, his job market paper, when he was finishing his PhD, found that higher gas prices are associated with lower obesity. From the left, people attacked him viciously and said he's a whore of the oil companies because, clearly that he's saying higher oil prices are good. From the right, people were attacking him and saying he was a whore of the environmentalist movement because he's saying that taxing gasoline is good. And as you go forward and as you do things and as you have these kinds of discussions, if people from both sides are attacking you viciously, you might probably be doing something correct. So what we want to do is find out how Walmart, Super Walmart, Sam's Club affect our waistlines. In the first version of this study, we focused primarily on Walmart discount stores and Sam's Clubs, because you just have more money as a result of Walmart making your dollars go farther. You have more money, you buy better stuff perhaps, and there's a trivial reduction in obesity perhaps associated with a Walmart discount store and associated with Sam's Club. At the suggestion of a couple of journal referees, we changed our approach and focused our attention on Super Walmart specifically, and we found that Super Walmart explains approximately 10.5% of the increase in obesity in the United States since 1989. So Super Walmart explains about a little bit more than 10 and a little bit less than 11% of the rise in obesity in the U.S. over about the last 20 years or so. So again, this is something that perhaps we could run with and say, hey, Super Walmart is making you fat. And indeed, we got a link to our paper on the New York Times economics blog with, I think, exactly this, no, it wasn't exactly this title. It says, is Super Walmart making you fat? Well, yeah, possibly so, because Super Walmart increases obesity, and we think the channel through which that happens is relatively straightforward. Super Walmart sells groceries, Super Walmart sells a lot of groceries, and Super Walmart sells a lot of processed food. So Super Walmart comes in, grocery prices go down, people eat more, people are going to be fatter as a result. Okay? It seems relatively straightforward and seems relatively logical. And indeed, in walking around at Super Walmart, I've noticed that when I look back at sort of my own life and what I was buying in graduate school, banquet frozen dinners, those were $1 a piece when I was buying those in graduate school in 2001 and 2002. Today, they're $1 a piece, some 8 or 9 years later. So in real terms, in inflation-adjusted terms, the price of junk food has probably fallen, and has probably fallen in part as a result of the expansion of Super Walmart. So is this necessarily a bad thing? Well, we can say yes, but. The increase in obesity attributable to Super Walmart, about 10.5% over the last 20 years or so. However, the estimated savings per household from the expansion of Super Walmart is about $177 per household. So every household in the United States, we estimate, is roughly $177 richer as a result of, first, the direct effect of the opportunity to shop at Super Walmart, and second, the indirect effect of Super Walmart on other firms' product mixes and pricing strategies. The amount of this, so the portion of this $177 that is offset by rising costs associated with obesity, is about 5.6%. We play with the numbers a little bit, and under a range of plausible scenarios, we don't really find any settings in which the offset savings associated with higher obesity is any greater than 10%. Okay. So to put it in perspective, your household is better off to the tune of $177 as a result of the savings that it gets from Super Walmart, and 5.6% of that saving is going to be offset by perhaps slightly higher obesity-related illnesses. Okay. So, for the most part, Walmart makes us better off, and while it's true that there's some margins on which Walmart makes us worse off, those margins pale in comparison to those on which Walmart, in fact, makes us better off. So what are some good reasons to dislike Walmart? Well, one thing that I found somewhat disconcerting is Walmart's political activity in the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. In 2005, 2006, Walmart supported an increase in the minimum wage. Walmart came out in support of an increase in the minimum wage. A couple of reasons why that might strike you as odd. The most important of which is, well, Walmart pays like $8 or $9 an hour, so if you raise the minimum wage from, at the time, $5.15 an hour to today $7.25 an hour, that's not going to affect necessarily the wages that Walmart is going to pay, even if you consider what we know about the income distribution, which is that roughly up to about 20% higher than the minimum wage, we get a slight spillover in the form of slightly higher wages for some people from increasing the minimum wage. So what does Walmart stand to gain from a higher minimum wage? Last summer, Walmart came out in support of employer-mandated health care coverage, which is a stunning reversal from their previous positions. So what, one might wonder, does Walmart have to gain from employer-mandated health care coverage? In short, what both of these things would do is they would raise their rivals' costs. So Walmart pays a little bit more than minimum wage. A lot of firms with which Walmart competes, they do not. So if Walmart gets a higher minimum wage and they're able to raise their rivals' costs, they're able to earn higher profits by placing a barrier to entry in the markets in which they do business. Second, Walmart gets an awful lot in the form of subsidies from local governments. They get tax increment financing and all sorts of sweetheart deals and infrastructure improvements and things like that from local governments. So there's a degree to which local governments have to compete for businesses and ultimately have to compete for tax revenue, But the degree to which they are offering sweetheart deals to what are referred to in this literature as whales, firms like Walmart, Home Depot, Costco, IKEA, et cetera, these gigantic big box retailers that might be sources of lots of tax revenue, what they're ultimately doing is they're taxing people who already live in the community, and they're taxing people who are already providing goods and services in order to subsidize the very firms that might put them out of business. Okay? This is something that I find problematic, we'll say, troublesome. Indeed, that Walmart engages in this kind of activity. But the question that we want to ask here is not why does Walmart do this nasty stuff, but rather what are the incentives in place that encourage firms like Walmart, Home Depot, Costco, Lowe's, et cetera, to try to use the government to hobble their competitors. The first lesson in any economics course is people respond to incentives. So when you give people an incentive to engage in the political process and to try to get rich by so doing, then you can expect more people to try to get rich through the political process. With the big difference between seeking wealth through politics and seeking wealth through commerce being that when you seek wealth through politics, you make everybody worse off. You can only get richer if other people get poorer. And you have to invest resources in trying to get your hands on other people's stuff. Through commerce, you make yourself richer by expanding other people's opportunities. You make yourself better off by making other people better off. So the question here is not what is going on with Walmart, what is going on with Costco, but what are the incentives that are producing this kind of behavior? So as a wise man once said, don't hate the player, hate the game. What you want to do here is think, what are the rules of the game that are encouraging the players to behave in extremely antisocial ways? The nightmare of many is that someday Walmart is just going to run everything. Walmart will be the only company. Walmart will be the only corporation. However, I would encourage you to remember Ozymandias. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. It's this destroyed statue from many, 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 many years ago. In the 19th century, people were worried about chain stores. In the early 20th century, people were worried about chain stores. It was Marshall Field, and then it was Sears, and then it was A&P. It was Marshall Field's, A&P, Sears. I think I might be getting the chronology mixed up. But these things come and go. Today we're worried about Walmart. Walmart's going to take over the world. No, Walmart is not going to take over the world. Eventually, somebody's going to come along. It might be somebody in this room, and find a way to beat Walmart at their own game, to provide even better products and better service at even lower cost and even lower prices. So someday, and I'll borrow a hypothesis from Don Boudreaux, who's an economist at George Mason University. In the same way that a lot of cultural critics lament the passing of small-town merchants and mom-and-pop stores on Main Street, who, incidentally, while they were the dominant firms, were denounced primarily for price gouging and dirty stores and all this other stuff by a lot of the same sorts of people who are today cultural critics. Someday when Walmart goes out of business, somebody is going to write an article saying, what has the world come to? That even Walmart, this venerable American institution, why I remember when I was a kid, you could go to Walmart and you'd run into your neighbors and it was air conditioned and there was all sorts of great stuff and you could buy things and you see the cashier and you get bubble gum and all this stuff at Walmart. What does America come to that even Walmart has gone out of business? So I'm not necessarily worried about Walmart taking over the world, and indeed I'm pretty sure that eventually somebody's going to find a way to beat them at their own game, and we're going to be looking back at Walmart as a relic of history. So this teaches us a couple of important lessons. Okay. We want to know how societies operate, how societies are organized, and how we individually can contribute to the creation of a better world. What Friedrich Hayek referred to as the fatal conceit, though, is the notion that somehow enough smart people with enough computers can find ways to run other people's lives. What made Walmart great is not necessarily that they're just a bunch of smart people with a bunch of computers, even though they're at the forefront of technology. Rather, what has helped to make Walmart great has been their ability to serve people to harness local knowledge, to find the virtues in their employees, and to translate that into profits for their shareholders. I would urge you then to proceed with caution. Because if we say we're going to hurt Walmart, or we're going to hurt this firm, or we're going to hurt that firm in the name of social justice or whatever idea we might have, ultimately we may end up creating more problems than we actually end up solving. So you might think that yes, we can in fact create a great society, but the extreme complexities of commerce suggest that often, what we should do is just leave people alone. Let people do their own thing. Let people innovate. Let people come up with new ideas. Don't go out with a sword and a gun and try to fight Walmart if you don't like them. Rather, come up with a way to do better what they do now. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. Yeah. Okay, so the question is Walmart hurts the firms with which it competes directly, and doesn't Walmart in some sense kind of compete with everyone? Because if you've been in a super Walmart recently, you can get your nails done, you can get a haircut, you can get all sorts of services, you can get prepared foods, you can get what have you. And in fact, as I understand it, Walmart is actually looking into opening medical facilities in super Walmart stores. And indeed, actually, a game that my wife and I were playing one time on a very, very long drive was, what is super duper Walmart going to have? The next round of big box stores, what is super duper Walmart going to have that super Walmart doesn't already? And we figured medical facilities and cars would be the really, really big ones. For the most part, that's a very good question, and I'm not exactly sure how that's going to shake out. Does Walmart compete with everybody? Not necessarily everybody. It may very well be the case that firms like Walmart, Target, et cetera, end up supplying most of the market for food, haircuts, what have you. But what this is going to do ultimately is I think is going to save people money and increase their demand for higher end products like well-prepared food and things of that nature. So to answer your question completely, I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen in the very, very long run as Walmart competes with more and more businesses, and I think that would actually be an excellent research project for someone who might be interested. Other questions? 1, 2.
Hi, my name is Jonathan. I'm part of UCD.
Okay.
I think there's probably plenty of people from UCD, maybe not. Anyway, I had a couple of questions, mostly with the concept of wealth.
Sorry, the concept of?
Wealth.
Wealth, yes.
Wealth
Okay.
development. So my question would be in two ways. How does Walmart affect wealth for people who are not shareholders? Secondly, isn't it not true that 0.7% of an effect of an election can sway an entire election?
Okay, so two answers to this question. First of all, how does Walmart affect wealth for people who are not Walmart shareholders? Super Walmart saves the average household $177 a year. So even if you're not a Walmart shareholder, the existence of Super Walmart, on average, makes an American household richer by $177 a year. Is 0.7% enough to sway an election? Yes, it is. But if you split that roughly 50-50, 50-50 give or take a couple of votes, I'm not entirely convinced that that's going to change a whole lot in terms of what happens in the American political economy. Now, what I would suggest, and in fact, actually, there's someone actually I think at UC Boulder, who's doing a paper on Walmart and political participation. Something that would be very interesting to see would be how does Walmart penetration affect elections in the areas in which it does business? So is this 0.7%, say, and note, this is not necessarily a perfectly consistent estimate, because if you take an instrumental variable strategy, that effect goes away completely. With state fixed effects, you get this negative 0.7%. With instrumental variables using distance from Bentonville to predict Walmart entry, you get actually a positive effect on voter participation. So at the very least, the effect is probably a little bit more ambiguous than I made it out to be here. But I think an excellent next step in something like this would be to look and see how enormous firms that might affect voter participation actually affect the outcomes of elections. And it's not clear to me necessarily that just because it's possible that the Walmart effect on voter participation could swing an election, that it is probable that the Walmart effect will swing an election. Okay, yeah, I believe I answered both those questions. Another question.
Yeah, you'd mentioned something about the Vlasic pickle
Yeah.
incident, and you're right, it's anecdotal for sure, but when you started talking about that, I thought you were going to go deeper into the story, which was that the effect that it had was that it decimated the entire industry.
Right.
For pickles and I
Right.
guess cucumbers is how they start out life. But have you done any research on that? Is there any evidence to prove that they have that deep of an effect on not just specific companies but entire industries around the entire world?
Yeah. So in that case, I'm not 100% sure that there's much in the way of like sort of really deep empirical work on how Walmart affects entire industry. So yeah, it's true that in the Vlasic pickle case, the idea there is that Walmart is a game changer. Walmart is what's referred to sometimes as a category killer. They kill the category sometimes in areas in which they do business, say for pickles or for toys or for a lot of other things. I think that ultimately what's going on is the net effect. The net effect globally is this process that Joseph Schumpeter called creative destruction. Some people win, some people lose. On net, we as a world are probably going to be better off in that our range of opportunities is going to be expanded somewhat. In particular, I think ultimately the very, very big winners from the impact of Walmart, Costco, Target, big box retail, and generally changes in the retail supply chain are going to be primarily people who, specifically consumers. Because it's important to note that the reason you produce stuff is not for the sake of producing it. We, in the United States, we produce cars not for the sake of producing cars. We don't produce pickles for the sake of producing pickles. We produce cars and pickles because people are willing to trade the income that they earn for that stuff because it helps them accomplish their goals. And so I think that ultimately, while I don't know exactly how Walmart affects the world industry by industry by industry by industry, the net effect on the production of wealth globally has been positive. Yeah, thank you.
I just had a question about Walmart's effect on the low-wage workforce. Have you done any work on that and how Walmart may impact different sectors of workers differently?
Okay, so Walmart's effect on the low-wage workforce. I personally have not really done a whole lot of work on this, and Walmart is very, very stingy with their data, which that's to be expected. Most firms are very, very stingy with their data. They don't really like sharing it with academics, and they really don't like sharing it with journalists. Now, I reviewed a book a couple of years ago that contained a collection of essays on, that mostly critical of Walmart, and one was about how Walmart affects the low-wage workforce. And one thing that was telling in that essay is the author made a bunch of very strong claims about, well, Walmart does this and Walmart does that. It lowers wages and blah, 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 blah. But then the author said, we don't actually know anything about the statistical distribution of the Walmart workforce. I found that shocking, because that is not just something that would be nice to have. That is a fundamental prerequisite if you're going to make very, very strong claims about how Walmart affects the low-wage workforce. Now, one thing that I would like to do, or I'd like to see somebody do, given that I only have 24 hours in a day, is look and see how the composition of the American workforce has changed in the last 40, 50, 60 years. Because you're not making an apples-to-apples comparison if you look, say, at retail wages in the United States today and compare those to retail wages in the 1950s or 1960s or 1970s. Because what's happened is the technological changes we associate with Walmart, McDonald's, et cetera, have made it so that people are able to move off of the farm and into the McDonald's or behind the cash register at Walmart or something like that. So what today is a low-wage job at McDonald's or Walmart or et cetera, that draws from the same part of the skill distribution that would have been primarily agricultural workers 40, 50, 60 years ago. Short answer is there are a lot of very, very strong claims out there and not really a whole lot in the way of evidence to back them up. So there's a lot of important work, I think, to be done on these issues specifically. Next.
When I go down south, like Mississippi, Missouri, Alabama, Arkansas, I notice in a lot of small towns there's always a Walmart, and I want to know your opinion as to why that is. Okay, so that's actually a great question. Why is there always a Walmart in the South? Okay,
Okay, so I live in Memphis, which is the distribution capital of the universe. It's the home of FedEx and all sorts of other stuff. Very specifically, what we refer to as Walmart country, if you look at the pattern of Walmart expansion, it's basically in concentric circles around Bentonville, Arkansas. So with a little bit of bias toward the south, but that was actually their expansion. That was actually their articulated expansion strategy, was distance from Bentonville and then distance from distribution centers. So specifically distance from distribution centers, with most of the original ones being in and around Bentonville, Arkansas. So the fact that a lot of places in Arkansas, Missouri, et cetera, are close to Bentonville, Arkansas is one of the reasons why there's always a Walmart there. So, also, and this is something I don't actually know with certainty, but I would expect that per capita income is something that predicts Walmart entry. So the fact that the South is poorer than the rest of the country is probably one of the reasons why Walmart tends to open there. So, but again, that's this creates for when you do research like this, actually identifying the causal effect of what you're interested in on what you want to explain is really, really, really hard, because in this case, it could very well be that what we think is a Walmart effect is in fact actually the effect of local poverty or something like that. So we have to control for that very, very carefully. Another question.
Do you shop at Walmart?
Do I shop at Walmart? Yes, I do. However, we are considering seriously dropping our Sam's Club membership, because most of the stuff that we get at Sam's Club we can now get through Amazon Subscribe and Save cheaper and much more conveniently. So. And in fact, actually, this is my wife is, since our second child was born, my wife has become kind of the queen of electronic commerce, and this in fact actually this might be the thing. I kid you not. This could be the thing that kills Walmart, is online delivery of consumer durables. So.
Talking about squeezing of companies that sell to Walmart, have you ever heard the claim that they actually will not pay the companies for their goods until they physically sell them? And if so, what kind of effect does that have on those companies' liquid assets, especially if the product doesn't move, they're just sat on? Right.
Yeah. So that is one thing that Walmart does. Is basically what they're doing is they're leasing shelf space to suppliers. And as I understand it, the product that is actually on Walmart's shelf is still the property of and the inventory of the firms with which they're doing business. So if you're going and you're buying French's mustard, you pick it up at Walmart. That mustard does not belong to Walmart. That belongs to French's. And Walmart I think only takes possession of it at the point of the transaction. So Walmart is not carrying that inventory. French's is carrying that inventory. What kind of effect is that going to have? That's going to force a lot of companies to run a very, very sharp and very, very lean operation. And quite honestly, there have been a lot of companies that haven't been able to hack it. One thing that a lot of firms are trying to do to compete with Walmart, and while we were doing some of this research, so we do shop at Walmart, but we also shop there's a Kroger about 2 blocks from our house, and Whole Foods Market not terribly far from us, and a couple of little sort of independent grocery stores that we shop at as well. Is we sort of look to see what are the differences between the Walmart shopping experience and the Kroger shopping experience and the High Point Market shopping experience and all these other things. And at Walmart, you can get a very, very narrow selection of goods. Like there might be 2 or 3 kinds of mustard in a couple of different sizes. At our local Kroger, there's a dozen different brands of mustard in a bunch of different sizes and things like that. And then at High Point Grocery or any of the other little places in Memphis, you can get, say, for example, much higher quality cuts of meat that you can get at either Walmart or Kroger or anywhere like that. So ultimately, what firms are going to have to do to compete with big box retailers is diversify in some sense and offer, I think, higher quality products. Companies like Walmart and Costco are going to be the ones that are going to be able to sell enormous bulk quantities of relatively low quality items. What a lot of other firms are going to do if they want to compete is compete not necessarily on the basis of price, but on the basis of providing slightly higher quality. If I can interject one last thing on that, on what's actually been a longer answer than I would anticipate, a paper we're working on now is looking at the relationship between between Sam's Club expansion, Costco expansion, and grocery prices. And we're actually finding that when Costco expands, when Costco enters an area, incumbent grocers actually offer slightly higher prices on stuff. And so this doesn't vitiate the law of demand in any meaningful sense, but what we think is happening is that companies are competing with Costco primarily by providing higher quality merchandise in nicer shopping environments and maybe a different selection, a different variety, a different array of what they're doing. So, yeah, he's got the microphone, so, yeah.
So, in all the departments which Walmart does business in, there's kind of a ceiling on quality, right? And on some departments that doesn't matter. Like if I'm going in for a plunger, whatever
right.
best-selling plunger is, that works for me. If I'm going for things that are more of like a social capital nature, like a book, you know, if I'm the kind of buyer who will read a book, Dan Brown, Twilight, you know, whatever, how much of Walmart's you know, how much of an edge do they have on that kind of competition versus how much does that push consumers like me who don't want those kinds of books to other stores that do have them?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. So there's some margins on which quality doesn't really matter, and incidentally, when we talk about what Walmart does in terms of opportunities it might create, not long after we bought our house, we bought a lawnmower at Walmart, and it was an absolute piece of junk. And so what we decided to do is we gave the lawnmower to Goodwill and decided to outsource our lawn mowing. We have a friend who runs a lawn service. He takes care of our yard for us. So on one hand, we made a mistake by buying a lawnmower that wasn't any good. On the other hand, on net, the savings that we have from being able to participate in an advanced division of labor economy like the United States created opportunities for other people to earn income by cutting our grass. Now, to answer your question about books and social capital building stuff, in economics, we have what we call the income effect and the substitution effect. The income effect is the change in consumption due to an increase in purchasing power that you get from the fact that your dollars will go farther. And so Walmart in general is going to have enormous income effects on a lot of different things, like, for example, books. Now, I personally, when I go to Walmart, I don't go looking for books. And if you've looked at the book selection at Walmart, you know, it ain't Barnes & Noble. It ain't Amazon.com, and it's certainly not your local used bookseller. You're not going to find exactly an intellectual treasure trove in the book section at your local Walmart. But one thing that we find in our paper on Walmart and leisure activities is that Walmart actually increases the probability with which you buy books. I can't remember off the top of my head what the coefficient we had on the probability that you actually read books is, but in general, I would expect either a slight positive or no real change in the degree to which Walmart itself affects the rate at which you buy books, read books, or engage in social capital building activities. So what I think is really going on and what's emerging from our research is a much bigger picture and a much bigger story about the relationship between technological change and the advancement of the commercial market economy and how that affects the way that people do things. So when we want to look for big monocausal stories like Walmart affects whatever, okay, we're not really going to find a whole lot. But Walmart is a smaller part of a much larger process. Okay, you've been very patient.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm asking if you say that Walmart increases consumer opportunity, how is that possible when it seems a very cyclical argument when we all have to go to Walmart to get our stuff. You see, how is that going to increase consumer opportunity when we all have to venture to Walmart just to buy stuff at Walmart? How is that increasing consumer opportunity for everybody else? I don't understand the argument too well. I'm not very economically astute, but I'm trying to figure that out.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Well. So, basically, the claim that we have to buy all of our stuff at Walmart that's just not true, because the increases in opportunity come in part from, first of all, Walmart carries a lot of stuff, but Walmart also competes with a lot of people who are going to say, okay, look, I want to earn income somehow. I have to compete with Walmart. I'm going to have to offer more, better, newer opportunities. So the fact that we can save money. And this is actually now a dated example since we're probably going to drop our Sam's Club membership. The fact that we save money on diapers and pasta and tomato sauce by shopping at Walmart, or now by getting all the stuff shipped to us from Amazon.com, means that our dollars now go farther and we can spend them on restaurant meals. We can spend them on particularly meals at decent restaurants where we get higher quality food. than we otherwise would, or we can spend them at nice ice cream parlors, or we can get higher quality clothes at boutique-y little places, or we can travel more, or we can do all sorts of different things. So it's not the case that we have to buy everything at Walmart, and I don't think we'll ever be in a case where we actually have to buy everything at Walmart. So at least I hope not. Yeah.
My big concern is for the employees of Walmart, because
Uh-huh.
I've heard firsthand from family members or friends that have worked there, and every employee at Walmart never will have full-time hours. Just ignore the simple fact of the health issues. Do you feel, because of all the publicity behind Walmart right now, do you feel like that could possibly change, or?
Okay. What? Okay. So this is an interesting question. How does Walmart treat its employees? In general, Walmart is going to be constrained by the fact that they're operating in a competitive labor market. And I went back to this hate the game slide for a second, because we want to ask, well, why wouldn't Walmart offer full-time hours to employees? I mean, that's a bit of a puzzle. Is Walmart not offering full-time hours because they're mean? Or are they not offering full-time hours because there's something that we can explain using basic economics? And the fact is, particularly since you have to kick in health care benefits, and particularly expensive health care benefits once someone becomes a full-time employee, the marginal cost of, say, the 38th or 39th hour or 40th hour of employment for someone working at Walmart is much, 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 much higher than the marginal cost of the first hour for a new part-time employee. So what's happening here is Walmart is responding rationally to the incentives that are in place. And if we want them to offer more full-time hours, then what we need to do is basically change the law that would make it much, much, much more expensive for them to hire full-time hourly employees. So, other questions? Yeah.
Because I like to look at things in terms of benefit.
Uh-huh.
Because I think there's short-term benefit and then there's long-term benefit.
Yep.
Because one of the things I see is a tendency towards dependency.
Okay.
Within the United States towards low prices. And
Right.
I object a little bit to your comment that Walmart does business to supply goods that we need. I think what they do is maybe that wasn't the claim that you made, but the point was Walmart purchases from the lowest price suppliers.
Right.
Okay. My question is, how does that affect America? How does that affect the United States if they are not the lowest priced supplier?
Okay, so how does this affect the United States if they're not the lowest priced suppliers? Okay, that depends on what we're the lowest priced suppliers of. The United States manufactures more stuff today than we did in the 1950s. So anybody who goes in the newspaper and says, the United States, we don't make anything anymore, that's just simply not true. There are a lot of things that we used to make that we don't make as much of, and a lot of things for which we're the high opportunity cost providers. So, again, one of the basic and I think most beautiful principles that economics has to offer to the world is the principle of comparative advantage, which basically says that when people specialize in an area in which they're the lowest opportunity cost suppliers of something, everybody's better off. We get cheaper stuff. So, for example, when we buy toys from China, we get cheaper toys, and Chinese toy manufacturers earn higher wages. So everybody presumably is better off. Now, this is where people tend to get frustrated a lot with economists and the economic way of thinking, because they ask, well, where will the new jobs come from? And quite honestly, I don't know where the new jobs are going to come from. I have some ideas, and I know some things that I would pay people to do, like assemble the desk that we bought online from IKEA a few weeks ago. Okay, I would gladly drop $50 to pay someone else to do that for me. Or someone to manage computer hardware or manage computer software or all of this other stuff. We're able to get material goods at a lower price, which then gives us the income that allows us to pay people to do other, presumably more pleasant stuff. So what does it do? What does it do for America? If we're not the low cost provider of manufactured goods, then we're going to be the low-cost provider of something else, or the low-opportunity cost provider of something else, like banking, like financial services, like software design. So I mentioned my iPhone a minute ago, and if you look at the back of an iPhone or an iPod, it tells us something very, very important, I think, about the international economy. It'll say, designed by Apple in California, manufactured in China. So we in the United States specialize in designing products, because that's where we have a comparative advantage. We're very good at designing wonderful iPhone products and iPhone apps and all this other stuff. And then people elsewhere might have a comparative advantage in actually assembling the stuff and shipping it to the United States. So long story short, trade creates wealth. Trade makes us better off. It makes us better off. It makes them better off. And we don't have to worry about whether we're going to be impoverished or they're going to be impoverished by the expansion of commercial society. One more? Okay?
So I guess like the overall thrust of what you're saying is something to the effect that we miss a lot of the social benefits that Walmart provides.
Yeah. Well,
but I think that the argument that you provided doesn't really necessarily back up that claim, in the sense that most of the things that you said were arguing from ignorance, in the sense we can't see its effect on social capital. Well, that doesn't mean it's not there.
Okay.
If I want to spend $177 a year to make sure it's not in my community, there's a mechanism to prevent me from that.
Okay, yeah, that's actually a good question, and something I need to clarify. This is not an argument from ignorance. This is, we've estimated the effect, and the effect in almost every case is zero. So we're pretty sure that almost across the board the impact. Sorry? Yeah, on everything we can measure. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Intangibles, and this is a good thing to leave off on, because if your criticism of Walmart is that you think Walmart is ugly, then that's a value judgment that economics really has nothing to say about. And that's nothing necessarily that unless we can find really good data that we're really going to be able to say a whole lot about going forward. So I believe that's it for questions, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have if you want to hang out for a few minutes.